if you can take that technical acumen that our children are getting from having all this access to devices and using it to engage with people and collaborate with people, you're adding in that social element. Being able to develop relationships, communicate, and be empathetic towards human beings is super powerful.
If you take the time and start to learn about the computer, you're going to get good at it and you're going to want to use it more. And you're going to start using it to your advantage. Just keep learning and keep growing.
Welcome to Women Talk Tech, the podcast for business professionals committed to advancing women in the tech sector.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women Talk Tech. I'm your host, Marie Wiese. And today we have a really great two guests on the podcast. And I'm going to introduce them in a second. And I just want to say we're continuing our summer of talking about alternative tech. So today's two guests couldn't fit into this more perfectly. Today, I have Katherine and Owen Lentner on the call. Katherine is the Director of Business Development for Lentner Technology and the Managing Director of BitTaxi.io that specializes in cloud infrastructure and software integrations. So she very much has a tech background, and Owen is her 13-year-old son. And the reason we have Owen on today is, first of all, Owen, welcome to the show and welcome to being the first under 18 guest we've ever had. This is a first for us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Round of applause. Cue the applause. And the reason I'm so excited about Owen's story, and I'm so excited about sharing it with our listeners today, is that he started his own nonprofit called the Lentner Junior Engineers. And he's going to tell us all about what this project is all about. But it very much fits into our theme of not only alternative tech and how we're developing our careers and our society and our skill sets around tech, but also tech for good. And that's a topic that I love. And Katherine Lentner, Katherine, you and I have talked many times about the impact of AI on society, what's happening. I know you're doing some cool things at Lentner Technology around AI. And we've often brought up the topic of technology for good and not just for evil, because that's why the whole industry of cybersecurity exists, because there is technology for evil. But before we get started, we're gonna ask both Katherine and Owen Lentner, the questions we always start with on the show, which is give us your backstory. So, Katherine, what has been your journey into tech? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, it's been a long journey. So I spent the majority of my first half of my life playing sports and only sports. And I think through that journey, I thought, okay, well, I should obviously work in sports. I've always been in some capacity in sales, but it's been in the NHL. It transferred over into the art world, which is where it actually gave me the opportunity as I aged to realize sales is really only as good as your process. And I realized that I wanted to work and provide that process to sales departments, various departments really. But it gave me that insight in all the roadblocks that can occur if your technology is really not up to speed and modernizing with the times.
Absolutely. So, Owen, you've had a lot of exposure to tech then in the family. Your dad, I think, started Lentner Technologies and has had a big impact in the tech sector. What's your backstory? I mean, I know you're only 13 and that's cool, but what's your backstory? Why are you so interested in tech?
Well, I'm very interested in tech. When I was young, I would always fiddle with buttons. My father would say, don't press that. You don't know what it's going to do. And I still fiddle with technology, but I always was interested in computers from a young age. My father would have me reset computers for his clients when they upgraded to new computers. And I always loved using computers, but, we can give these computers to somebody that needs them. They don't have to go in the garbage. And so I always liked technology, and I definitely want to do something with technology in my life.
So tell me about the Lentner Junior Engineers. What's that project all about?
So Lentner Junior Engineers, the philosophy is, we when I was young in 2018, my father, we would always get these computers. We were phasing out of Windows 7, it was becoming not good to use anymore. So Windows 10 was the new, the new big kid in the block. So all of the computers came in. We don't want these computers anymore. We're upgrading Windows 10 time. So we had all these computers that we didn't know what to do with. We would wipe the data and put Windows 10. They were capable of Windows 10, but they were not necessarily painfully, but they weren't up to speed with this extreme computing and gaming and software used for extreme business, but more or less our web browsing. So I thought, why don't we give these computers to somebody that needs them? We shouldn't let them go to waste if they work well. So me and my father, I didn't have a grasp of what a refugee was, but I always thought, what could we do with these? We can give these to people that need them. So Lentner Junior Engineers is all about donating computers to people that need them, people that would want a computer in this world that computers are becoming more useful.
So what have you learned about this enterprise that you've started as you've been out in the community, sharing not just the computers, but if I'm not mistaken, you teach courses in helping people who are not that tech savvy how to use the computers. What have you learned in your journey around this?
I learned that giving back to my community, it feels great. I always think that giving back to my community, it's a great thing to do. I would always, I would teach the classes. I love teaching the seniors or the students how to code, but I feel like I really learned that giving back to your community is one of the best things in life. Giving people knowledge.
And so I know there's a lot of seniors that you teach. Are you saying you not just teach them how to use the computers, but you're teaching them how to code?
No, not the seniors.
Okay.
The students in Bridgeport, not the seniors.
You're teaching students how to code. And what are you teaching the seniors? What's the most common thing you get asked when you're teaching people how to use a computer?
How to use my phone. I mean, that's these cell phones. They're starting to get more complex. But the seniors, they always ask me, how do I do this? They always want me to come back. Oh, and we need you for a one-on-one. We need help with our phones. So I would always show them how to use their cell phones, open Google Chrome, make contacts is one of the most difficult things, I think, because all of the phones are different, whether the operating system, Samsung's One UI, Apple iOS, Motorola, they all have a different version. It's all real Android, but it's different. So these seniors, they always need extra assistance because sometimes it's hard to do things on cell phones. So that's what they always ask me. How do I make contacts in my phone? How do I use Google? How do I do this?
I think there's a whole pile of people who need that, not just seniors.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. And I'm just thinking about my own mom who's been recently widowed and she's thinking of moving to an iPhone and the whole family's going, no, now we have to teach you how to do this. And to be honest, there's not a lot of resources to say we can send her to the senior center to learn this. So you must be a really, really popular guy. People must love you when you show up. What kind of feedback do you get from people when you're doing these kinds of things?
I usually get a lot of positive feedback. I think they really enjoy learning more. I feel like these phones, as I said, they're getting complex, and I'm always here to help. I'm always here to provide my classes and transferring my knowledge and helping them use their cell phones better and their computers.
Right. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to turn it back to Katherine for a second. And Katherine, I know you have a lot of really creative ideas in helping tech companies in particular with their marketing efforts. And, we're entering a new era. We've come through the pandemic of not being able to do face-to-face things. That must have been tough. Sorry, and I just want to say that must have been tough for you, Owen, during the pandemic, not being able to go into seniors' homes, like not being able to go out there. Was it killing you not being able to get out there?
It was really killing me not being able to see my friends. The only time I would go outside is to go walk in the trail with my sister. COVID was awful. I missed my friends. I missed seeing other people for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we're back to a point where we can get back out there. We can start using face-to-face techniques. And Katherine, you've mentioned that, one of the things you think tech companies need to be doing more of is giving back to the community, that it's the best way to get your name known, to get out there and create awareness. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I believe, especially with technology, you either know it or you don't. And I think in sales, as it pertains to technology, a lot of times people don't want to hear about the actual tool. They want to know that tools exist. And the best way to put your brand in front of potential clients is to show that you're willing to teach and educate. Educate, I think, is the most important thing about the various cybersecurity threats, about different ways to be more productive with technology, and give it to the community and get credit for that. I think that that's put me in front of a lot more people than a lot of the various types of marketing campaigns I can do, where I'm putting product in front of people that might not necessarily be interested in hearing about something that they're supposed to buy. But when they can see it in real life and playing out, and seeing that tech companies are willing to provide this intel without looking for a payback, it's a really large reward.
Hi, listeners. We are so excited to invite you all to join us on Thursday, September 14th at the in-person Women in IT USA event in New York, where Diversity Q and Information Age will bring together the Women in IT Summit during the day and the awards gala dinner that same evening. Join us for a day filled with valuable insights, thought-provoking conversations, and an evening of networking, delicious cuisine, and pure enjoyment. It's guaranteed to be a fabulous time. To find out more about the summit and awards ceremony and to book your tickets to attend, please visit womeniniTawards.com.
Yeah, so I think that you're absolutely right, and so my follow-up question to that is, you're obviously leading by example. Why is it important that people like Owen get out there and educate their peers and give back and educate the community? Why is this so important?
I think that Sean Lentner said it best. Kids use technology so much these days, but using technology to develop relationships with people is key. So we have a generation of children that we're raising right now that they're always on a device. But if you can take that technical acumen that our children are getting from having all this access to devices and using it to engage with people and collaborate with people, you're adding in that social element that we definitely don't want to forget is very important in every aspect of our lives, and particularly in business. Being able to develop relationships, communicate, and be empathetic towards human beings is super powerful.
I think you're absolutely right. Owen, you've obviously had a lot more experience than most people your age at this, but what advice would you give when you're first helping people engage with technology? What's the best advice you can give them?
I like to tie this. I play a bit of the piano, and I'm just learning it. But I feel if you set your mind to it, then you can do it. If you take the time and start to learn about something, you're eventually going to start to get good at it. There's nothing holding you back if you set your mind to it. I play the piano. I'm not too good. But when it comes to computers, if you take the time and start to learn about the computer, you're going to get good at it. And you're going to want to use it more. And you're going to start using it to your advantage. So just keep learning and keep growing.
Right. And I think people, I'm sure you've come across people that obviously we always talk about, I'm sure you're going to learn in school as you get older, this whole idea of right brain, left brain, that some people are more creative and don't necessarily understand how things get put together. They just know they're put together and they think about this creative element. And then there's the more serious side of the brain that says, I want to deconstruct this and figure it out. You're obviously using both sides of your brain at this point, which I love. But for those people who are highly creative and intimidated by technology, what would you tell them if they're intimidated to learn, or they're intimidated that this seems overwhelming? The minute they flip that phone screen on, what do you tell them?
I'll also compare this. I'm probably the opposite of creative. I'm very bad at art in art class, and the teacher always tells me, it just, if you learn and you practice it, you're going to get good at it and you're going to start to enjoy art. If you learn more about the computer and if you learn how it works, I mean, it's not too difficult, but if you start to understand it, you can use it to your advantage. And there are definitely ways to be creative on the computer. Coding is very creative. I find it very interesting how that works, but
yeah, I love that. So, Katherine, if I can flip it back to you for a second, what advice would you give the support networks of young people, whether it's teachers, parents, coaches? I know you're very familiar with coaching, to really encourage a culture of learning and ambition around this. What would your advice be?
I think, learning from my mistakes, diversifying what you expose yourself to. I think it's great to specialize. It's very important to be passionate about things. But if you don't really try everything, how do you really know what you love? And I think at such young ages, we get very set on our minds, but we haven't been exposed to enough to really understand what it is that we love. So I think teachers need to expose, and parents need to expose their kids to everything. And, Owen, probably spends about 90% of his time thinking about technology, creating things, gamifying airplanes, you name it, and donating his time. But I definitely push him to get out and exercise. I definitely push him to, be involved in the arts, just because you never know where certain passions might lie. And I think that probably applies to a lot of parents and teachers whose kids are very, sports driven, artistically driven. Give them the coding classes and give them the tech classes, because it could really unveil something that's underneath all that. That student or that child could really develop something special with.
And I think you've hit on a really interesting point about diversifying, but also, in my mind, we need to start changing the narrative with people at a very young age around what is and is not possible. You've heard this thing. I mean, and I don't know if any of your friends have said this that are females, have said, well, girls just aren't good at math. I don't get math. I don't want to be, I'm not good at this.
Yeah, I've heard a little of that.
Yeah. And I think we need to change the narrative around this. Women just don't go into tech, which is true statistically, but I think we need to change the narrative and stop believing that that's true. And I think at a young age, we can help people with that by doing exactly what you're saying, Katherine, is helping young people diversify and experience other things, because you don't know you're going to be bad at something until you try it. Like,
I completely agree.
You and I talked about golf, and I already know I'm bad at golf. I get it. Like, it's just not going to be a sport that's going to come easily to me, but I'm trying. I'm out there trying. And I think that's the thing, that you have to overcome some of these things. You have to be open to saying, I'm going to try this. And I definitely think with young girls in particular, we need to tell more young girls that, tech is everywhere. No matter what you're interested in, you're going to have to gravitate towards tech in some way, shape, or form. And that a career in tech is not a bad thing, that it's not. And it's maybe not what you think it is. And that's the reason we're doing the whole alternative tech series this summer, is to say, you'd be surprised where tech leads you. We're going to have a guest on later in the summer who's a mechanic, and she uses cutting edge technology in her garage, and she's a beta tester for some really interesting products. Well, when you start becoming a mechanic, that's not the first thing you think of, right? So I think that this is something we need to put out there, and I think we need to change the narrative. Speaking of changing the narrative, I just have to do my in-podcast advertisement for the Ambition Report. Women Talk Tech has recently done a survey to talk about ambition and what does ambition look like today. And I think ambition is now encompassing more than just your career. It's encompassing a lot more things. And we have some really interesting findings in the report. I encourage everybody to download it and read it. We have 3 key findings. I'm not going to tell you what they are. I'm going to make you download it and read what those 3 key findings are. But you're going to be surprised what we found out about the state of ambition today, and how that works. One thing I want to add to my second little promo in podcast is that Owen would welcome any opportunities to train any classroom in financial literacy and also with computers and tech. And Owen, do a little advertisement for yourself. What kind of opportunities are you looking for?
I feel I do finance. I teach finance. I teach technology. If anybody, I would love to teach technology. You guys would love to reach out. I would love to do technology teaching, donating.
I think this is an opportunity you can't miss. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, you live in what state?
Oh, Wilton, Connecticut.
Wilton, Connecticut. So you live in Connecticut. If you're an East Coaster listening to the podcast, you should definitely, that's an offer you can't refuse. And I think anybody would be very grateful and benefit very much from your training, Owen. So thank you so much for the work you've been doing. And Katherine, thank you. Katherine is the Director of Business Development for Lentner Technologies and the Managing Partner of bittaxi.io. And she is also a big sports enthusiast. So I know you've got a great background that's transitioned to tech. So I think perfect guest for our podcast today. Thank you so much for being on the show, Katherine.
Thank you so much for having us. It's always a pleasure and enjoyed it.
And thank Owen, keep doing what you're doing. You're just killing it. So thank you so much. You've been listening to another episode of Women Talk Tech. I'm your host, Marie Wiese. And as always, thank you so much for listening.